Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show and welcome to episode 99. All right, guys, we're back again. So I'm always kind of posting in certain groups and everything, just trying to, kind of scout out more good guests. And, this guy reached out to me. We started talking, and so we're just going to kind of get to know each other just through the interview. Say screw it. Buddy, you want to just kind of introduce yourself?
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be on, man. My name's Matt. I'm basically a disabled entrepreneur, like so many of you out there. And basically, I'm a professional wrestling promoter. So look forward to giving you a bit of my backstory. I'm based in England. So, it's all good. It's all good to speak to another brother from a different mother from across the pond.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So obviously, before we get into kind of what you do now and your current life, why don't we kind of start from the beginning? Obviously, what is your disability?
I've got learning difficulties, so dyslexia. Probably got a mental age of probably a 14-year-old. So it's always been learning difficulties. Physically, I don't have any disability. I'm able-bodied. Thank the Lord I am. I mean, so many people are not even able-bodied. So when I talk about my disability, when people say to me about my disability, dyslexia and stuff like that, I sometimes say that I'm fortunate to have just a little disability, because there's people out there who probably will be listening to this who can't even walk or pick a phone up or something like that, who are far, far worse off than me. So I hope with this interview, it gives a bit of hope and encouragement to people of all different disabilities.
Right. Yeah, but I mean, there's still a lot of hurdles and from what you had to go through, and it's a slow process. And, I think that's what we kind of do. A lot of times we compare ourselves to people who are worse and we just go, it's not that bad. But it doesn't mean your life isn't hard. It's just not as hard as some. And at least you can see that and know that, and that you can still appreciate life without having to worry about, my life isn't the worst, or my life is the worst, and, I can't go on. Because there's a lot of people that are mentally crippled because they just think their life is pointless because of having a disability, when in your case, you're doing the best and you're doing great in life.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if you think about jumping hurdles, I mean, but jumping over the barriers, I mean, I've been going through that my whole life. And where I live in England, I don't know if you know England very well, it's totally different to the United States. But, I come from a little town called Cheltenham. And when I was born, I was probably one of the only, my father's from Jamaica, so I'm obviously half Jamaican and half British. That's where I get my lovely tan from. But, when I was growing up, there was hardly any black people in the area I lived in. So definitely I did have to overcome a lot of obstacles early on in life before I knew that I had dyslexia. They didn't actually find out I had this disability until I was about 16. And when we finish school in the UK, we finish at 16. So by the time I'm ready to finish school and go out into the hard world that you do, I've now found that I got a disability, a dyslexia, and I had to learn how to read and write again. So yeah, it was hard, but you do get through these things.
Right. What was, like, what did you or your family, what did they think that was actually wrong with you? I mean, obviously you showed signs, they just kind of ignored it, but what was there any kind of thought process in your head going like, oh, it may be this, maybe that?
Well, my mum, I grew up in a single parent family. My mum always said to the teachers at school I had dyslexia. I couldn't do my shoelaces up. I couldn't tell the time. I have the signs of a person who has got dyslexia. But obviously, we're talking like I was born in 79. When I was at school, this was the early 80s. I mean, dyslexia wasn't really, not many people looked at it, even in the United States, which are probably more advanced than we are here in the United Kingdom. So, it wasn't looked upon. It was just, you're a bit slow or a bit thick or something like that. That's what they used to say years ago. But now, obviously, it's a recognised disability, and now it's treated and dealt with properly in the right manner, if you know what I mean.
Right. So how did you feel about when you got that diagnosis of being dyslexic? What?
Well, it was kind of a blessing because then I knew I could go when I went to an exam or, when I had to read something or spell something, I could tell someone that I've got dyslexia, I have problems with my reading and writing and stuff like that. And then you sort of get the help that you need. But until then, it was very hard. I mean, I was expelled from school when I was about 13. I was in trouble with the police, and it was all because of this disability, because I couldn't read and write. My thought process was totally different to everyone else's. And it wasn't that I was a troublemaker in the class. It was just, I couldn't do the work that everyone else could do. So, if you can't do it, you have to find yourself some other. And, teenagers, they get up to mischief and you think,
Right.
the class clown. So that's what I did.
What were some of the things that you did that got you expelled? Like, was it really that bad, or is it just, they just thought you were acting out?
No, it was pretty bad. I mean, it was fighting with other kids, and just the normal stuff kids do. It wasn't like anything like serious or but after a while they think to themselves, oh, we give him one chance, second chance, third chance, fourth chance, well, fifth chance. I think it's time for him to leave now. So it was time for me to leave.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess it probably was a blessing that you got your diagnosis. The only thing is, because I know some people, when they get certain labels like that, that's when they kind of want to try to hide it, because then people know, like, oh, that's what's wrong with you, and people look at you in a different light.
Yeah, it was actually, I got into trouble. I mean, I don't tell anyone to go and get yourself into trouble with the law, but it was actually when I got in trouble with the police for fighting again. My mum spoke to basically like a social worker, or I don't know what they are in the United States, youth worker.
Yeah.
And the youth worker basically said to the judge, this kid's got some mental problem or some sort of disability we need to sort. And the judge put the test at the school I went to, and the tests were found that I had dyslexia. And it was funny because I think I had a thing where I had to be in front of the judge for 6 months, and they skipped it all, and it was done and over and done within 4 months. And I can remember the judge saying, I never want to see you ever again, but I'm very happy to see you in this courtroom this morning, and you're doing really well, and good luck to you, young man. And that was the day I looked at myself and said, look, I've done something, I've achieved something here. I've done and got through what I had to do, and got off 3 months earlier than I was supposed to do, and I got through it, and that was the last time I ever got into any trouble in my life, because that judge had given me 5 minutes of his time, and he praised me when I'd done what I was asked to do. So at 15 years old, I was a man ready to take on the world then, so to speak.
Right. Now, when you were like acting out, were you just kind of angry, or were you getting bullied? Like, what was kind of your thought process?
I just think I was just angry and a bit of a bully. I was hitting the smart kids and probably hanging around with the other kids that had dyslexia. So yeah, I was acting out, and
right.
Probably just a lack of attention, and knew I could put it down, knew what I wanted to say, but I couldn't put it down on paper. So
right, so
and then being told you can't be what you want to be because you ain't never going to get this grade, or people put you in boxes, which I'm sure in the United States it happens just like it does in England. I've got to say all around the world.
Right.
If you're in a certain category, people like to box you in, and that's what I'm not. You shouldn't be boxed in. You can do anything you want in this world, and you can achieve anything.
Right.
It's just about perseverance and just how praying the big man above hears you, and I think he does. And you'll get there.
So it was kind of like an inner anger with yourself, like you couldn't express yourself. The only way you could really show it and not completely stick out because of your disability or whatever you thought it was at the time, you would just fight and hit people and do stupid shit.
Yeah. It was, it was like, I had all the girls after me, and, so I'm thinking to myself, I can't be disabled. No, I got all the girls after me. You don't see that on telly. And, it was kind of that, and I used to watch like the 80s movies, like the Rocky and Rambo movies, and, you just thought, wow, if you hit him, it'll go away. It doesn't really happen that way, So, yeah, it was kind of us just acting out, and, no one was there to help, and it felt like no one cared at the time.
Right. Well, that's what happens with a lot of people that are in that situation. Maybe not like the jocks, the ones that are, well, even them, a lot of them, they're insecure because it's like they know if they didn't have their position at their sport, people wouldn't pay attention to them. So, and they probably lack a personality, they lack something. In your case, you had something that's holding you back and you didn't really know what it was. So you're trying to cover it up by just doing anything that will not draw the attention to the one thing that you're afraid of everyone kind of knowing. And so you do stuff like that because, and I think a lot of people do that. There's a lot of people, and yeah, obviously you're young and you had a real reason, you had a disability, but there's a lot of people that are so insecure that it's just they're going to do whatever they can to kind of cover up the one thing that really, you see a lot of guys who are like straight or excuse me, who are gay, but they act straight just so that their friends don't see that they're gay. So they do stupid stuff by teasing other people and doing whatever, but deep down they're just really sad and lonely and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, totally agree with you, my friend.
Yeah. Do you think, in the area you were in, was it a predominantly white area?
Yeah, definitely.
You said you were black. So do you feel like it was harder for you to overcome the racial proponent or the disability proponent?
I think it was both. I mean, I think what it was is we've got black kid in our school and no one cared basically. And that's what it was until that judge found out I had this dyslexia, and then things started changing for me. I knew then I had this disability, and I knew then I would have to work harder. And then I sort of, in my young head then, I was probably about 14 and a half. I probably wasn't even 15 at the time, thinking about it. But when I started processing it in my head, and I just thought what my mum used to say to me, whatever you do, you're going to have to be better at. And that's when I started challenging myself to read wrestling magazines. That's how I taught myself to read. And, I read wrestling magazines and stuff like that because I was intrigued by it. And I'll come on to that in a bit. But so I had to teach myself to do a lot of things, to read and write and stuff like that. So I taught myself a lot of things, which other kids did, really at 6 years old. I was doing this at 14 and a half, 15, when, your brain's supposed to be getting ready for the next stage of life, I guess.
Right. Yeah, no, I mean, that's kind of, I think there's always, especially kids who are kind of lonely and just battling something, whether it's mental health or whatever disability or just whatever, loneliness. Hold on, my cat is climbing across the table. Get out of here. But they seem to find something to gravitate towards that kind of changes their outlook and helps them just live. I even remember as a kid, and we'll get into wrestling and all that, but I was really big into wrestling when I was a kid. And but yeah, there's always something that kind of, especially, being dyslexic and having trouble reading, but you found something that you kind of just like woke you up, and it made you kind of push harder to try to read.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, correct. Yeah.
Can you tell people, just for people who don't know, like what in your mind the definition of like dyslexia, like how does it impact you on a daily basis?
On a daily basis, I would say dyslexia is word blindness. That's what I class it as. But I think it also, it affects you. It makes you angry sometimes, not in a sense that it's you against the world, in a sense, but that you can say, when you want to say something, or you know exactly what you want to say, but you just know that you can't put it down on paper. And that's the thing what would really, I think it does get you down sometimes, because you want to go for a job and something like that, or a high paid job, and you just know that, it says on the paper, are you disabled? If you've got disabled, you put, dyslexia, and sort of when that person reads the application form, when the disabled thing's ticked, in your eyes that they're going to circle that themselves and say, okay, we're going to interview him, but we're not going to give him the job, sort of thing, because they've automatically stereotyped you. That's how it feels. Right. So that's how it feels. I think you just feel that you're being stereotyped as some sort of like thick person, but you're not. It's just that a person with dyslexia's brain runs a lot quicker than the average person's.
Right. Yeah. So how has it progressed? Obviously you seem to be doing really well, and but before, when it was at its worst and you were very angry and all that, like how tell me kind of like just in order? Like how has it progressed from to how good it is now? I mean, obviously it still affects you, but I'm sure it was much worse when you didn't know what it was.
Yeah, I mean, when I was like, 13, 14, I mean, I would literally just sit in school and daydream. Literally just daydream. Nowadays, I know now I can go up to someone or come to my fiance and say, and my fiance is called Jackie, I can say to her, hey, Jack, how do I spell expect? And she would write it down and then I would spell it out. So, I've learned how to control it, basically. I know how it happens. I know what to do with it myself. I don't know how anyone else deals with their disability, and I'm sure every person's got their own little way, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Well, I've said before, like it's a world that's kind of not made for us, but we always find a way to make it fit and acclimate it to what we do. There's a lot of software and technology and things out there that really help us, and there's just basic things out there that we just use just to make our life easier. Even if it's
yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, not every, I'd like to say it like this, but like I say it like this: not every blind person acts like Stevie Wonder, and not every deaf person acts like Lou Ferrigno, who played the Hulk. We've all got different ways to handle our own disabilities, and I think that's you nailed it on the head. You nailed it in the coffin. How you just said each and every one of us handle it differently.
Yeah. I've said before, like it's the world is kind of like a house that has no doors or windows, and we have to try to find a way in, and we will.
Absolutely, yeah.
We don't know how, especially in the beginning. We have no idea how, but we do, and it's just I think that's what makes people with disabilities so special, is that we try so many different things, and we take risks, and we do a lot just to accomplish just the most basic things that everyone else isn't proud of accomplishing, like getting their own place or working or any of that. And we have to overcome so many hurdles that when we finally get it, it's like, wow, we did something.
Yeah.
And we earn what we get because we have to try so much harder. We have to put ourselves out to the world, because when we even like going to a job or going to school, at least with you, when you got out of high school, like that was when you kind of figured out what was wrong with you. But a lot of people who go to school knowing what their disability is, they have to tell the teachers, hey, I need this. If you're blind, I need, or just visually impaired like me, I can't see the chalkboard, so I need, notes written down or whatever. But you have to expose yourself. You have to let people know you have a disability, which is kind of frightening, especially as an early age, because high school can be very cruel.
Yeah. And so, it's like you have to sort of get prepared to tell people in a way, and I don't like to say this in a nasty way, you have to make yourself feel weak. And in the type of world we live in, because I class the world as one big jungle, generally the weak are preyed on. But, we have to get around ways which we know we can't get preyed on. That's what I like to say to people.
Right. Yeah, because we try to beautify like nature, right? Because we go like, oh, look at that lion. He's the most beautiful, majestic beast with this mane and so on. And then in a minute, he's ripping a zebra's throat out. And,
yeah, absolutely.
And not only that, like the male lion, for the most part, sends out his 7 women to go get him food. And then they bring the food back for them. And I like to call them kittens. I know they're called cubs, but they're cats. So they're babies. And instead of him saying, okay, let's feed the babies first, or let the women eat because they're tired, they just hunted, he goes, no, that's for me. And then he says, okay, then the cubs can have it, and then we're going to go over here and have sex, and then when I'm done with all of you, then you can eat. And so that. Again, of course, it's just one animal, but there's so many things in nature. There's seals that drown their children. Like, nature is really screwed up.
It's the lion sort of just sleeps all day long, and when he wants his food, it's there.
Right. So exactly. So when you say the world is like a jungle, like it really is, but we try to smoothen it out. We try to make it seem like everything is so beautiful and great. But how many people? I mean, look at people, like people with disabilities are like the zebra. We're like the people at the watering hole that when the lions and the hyenas and the crocodiles and we're the ones looking up, going, oh shit, uh-oh. And, because we feel so weak in comparison to everyone else, because that's the perception. And the reality of it is we actually are the strong ones. We are the ones
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
emotionally and internally and physically, because we overcome so much. So yeah, the world really is just obviously it can be very brutal, it can be very terrible. There's a lot of great and beautiful things, but there's also a lot of horrible things, and people with disabilities know that more than any. Just on our personal, our health and all that, and we just know how rough life can be. So that, me and my friend Sue Ellen were talking yesterday, and I was just saying, like, she was talking about some bad news that happened in her family, and I said, well, the good thing is with people like us, we take bad news easier than most, especially the older you get, because we've dealt with so much bad news that it's kind of normal in a way. It sucks, but it's
Yeah,
it's kind of like, oh, okay. Obviously,
I,
depending
I,
on the news, but
I totally agree with you, my friend.
yeah, and but you look at it like, how many years ago could you and I be talking, a black guy and a white guy? Obviously, it's silly to us. It's stupid. We don't look at that shit like it's anything. We're just talking. We're getting to know each other. Like, legitimately, for the audience, this is our first conversation. We had a couple voice messages the other day, but you know, we can bond and get along because we don't give a shit about what we look like. We don't care about what we have or don't have. We just know that, like, okay, someone else is going through something. I don't feel alone, and just another person just battling on the other side of the country, or the world, I mean. And who cares about whatever it is that's ailing them? And we can look at it that way because we've seen how many people have looked down on us for, again, what we don't have.
Yeah, I heard a good quote the other day. Actually, it was from the war, and it was basically a film called Small Island. I don't know if you've ever watched the film. It's about a group of Jamaicans that came to England and fought in the war. And when they left the army, they wanted to live in England and stay in England. And I'm sure a lot of Americans know that Jamaicans had a big community in England, and it grew up, and that's it carries on. But the one guy said to the one black fella, the Jamaican guy says to the white guy, he says, I don't know what we're fighting about. And the white guy says, what are you on about? He said, well, you called me over here. We came to help you for World War II, and now we're fighting each other. We're on the same side. And that's what I like to say to all disabled people. Don't start arguing, because we're on the same side. We're all fighting the same battle. Don't start arguing between us, because then we will be the weak ones. So if you stay together and everyone unites, we'll be all right.
Yeah, that's again back to this is kind of a theme and might have to be something to do with how I'm going to title this episode. But it really is like a jungle, because when you see like lions, like or any like leopards, they go after, like, they're not going to go after a full grown elephant, because a full grown elephant is a problem. They're not going to attack it when it's a giant herd, when they're all together and they're ready to go. They want to attack the weak. And so
Absolutely.
if we all stick together and we have people looking out, we're all alert, and and it's just like, well, who's going to attack us now? We're strong. So it's like, yeah, okay, you can't hear, I can't see, you can't walk, you can't. But when we're together, we all have legs, we all have eyes, we all have ears, we have all these things. And it's like, we are one strong, ultimate just being. Not to be like cheesy, but like there's one, again, I've said so many times, there's 1.6 billion of us, and that's spread amongst the world. So why can't we fight for each other's rights? And one of the things I've noticed in this country, in the United States, is a lot of people fight for certain causes. Let's say if you're a disabled woman, you're going to fight for the Me Too movement, for more empowerment for women, or Black Lives Matter, or the LGBTQ community, for the gay, transgender, and so on. But then they forget the disability part of it, because the disability community is blended in with, there isn't a person or a culture or a religion or whatever that doesn't have a disabled person in it, whether you're black, Hispanic, white, gay, straight, tall, short, it doesn't matter. But a lot of us tend to forget, oh yeah, I'm also disabled. Why can't I fight for my rights too? Because in this country, gay rights, black rights, women's rights, even though there's people still fighting for them, their rights are still well ahead of people with disabilities. And
that's pretty much the same in England.
Right.
I mean, all you've got to do really is read the most famous book that's ever sold. I mean, that's the Bible. I don't want to beat on about it, but Jesus, saved leopards. Jesus healed the blind. I mean, even right back then, it was put in the Bible for a reason that the God actually came to earth as a man and started healing people. In my eyes, a leper, what they call leprosy, but back then they would have said anyone who was, who couldn't do normal things like a normal person, they probably would call you a leper back then. Yeah. So, it just says it back then when we weren't probably the most civil people back then. Now we're actual civil human beings, supposedly, but, like you just said, we still got to fight for these civil rights of, disabled. If you're a bit, dyslexia, if you're blind or if you're deaf or something like that, it's your rights are behind everyone else's rights.
Right. I mean, there's nothing wrong being proud to being black or gay or whatever. That's great. But I think the reason why people are so much more just forward with their color or their gender or whatever is because it's more acceptable. Whereas there's not enough of us saying, well, yeah, I'm proud to be disabled or I'm proud to be blind or whatever. They don't do that because a lot of people, and again, there's some of us that are, and I thrive in being, a fighter and so on, but there's not many people, there's not many bumper stickers and all that and holidays and all these things. We make up these little monthly things, but there really isn't any whatever, disabled pride. We have like a disabled pride month, but like no one, it's not like well known, like, Black History Month or whatever. And so, like I said, there's not a lot of pride in people with disabilities.
I mean, look how many, and I'm sure in the United States as it is in England, look how many young men and women go to war to fight for their country and come back disabled.
Right.
And it's not their fault. Some people are coming back in wheelchairs and they fought for the country they loved so much. Right,
yeah. And yeah, they went in with a different perception of just humans and just being a full-figured person and coming back with blown off legs, and now their country is treating them totally different. And so even if they give you like a little pin or some sort of award, they still kind of throw you to the wolves at the end. It's just like, okay, well, we're kind of done with you. Thank you for your service. And and some depending where you are, some people get treated okay, but there's a lot that don't.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it's sad when you see disabled people who are homeless and stuff like that. It's so terrible. I think sometimes Hollywood is a bad thing as well because they don't help the situation, if you know what I mean.
No, they glorify it and they cutesy it up. There's a lot of stories out there that are not what they seem, or they Hollywooded it up by just, throwing in some explosions and this and that, and they take out certain parts just to make it look better than it is and gives it a happy ending story. But not everything has a happy ending story. And, and then of course, one of the things I've talked about with a lot of people on here is that obviously the representation, if it's something to do with people with disabilities, it's never a person with a disability playing it. Most cases. So the
all you got to do is watch the 4th of July with what's his name, Tom Cruise.
Tom Cruise, yeah.
And he comes back as a disabled person. When I first watched that film, I was thinking to myself, every person in a wheelchair then is an alcoholic and causes his mum problems, because that's what the film perceives it as. But when I've met people in wheelchairs, it's not even like that. Some of the nicest people I've met since, I've been in a group with a company called Kaleidoscope in the United Kingdom, who's one of the founders is actually one of the admins on the page I found you on. But some of the nicest people I've met are actually disabled people.
Right. Well, but even bringing it back to you, like without the proper information and just, obviously medical information and all, but with like you obviously were heading down a bad path, not knowing what was going on with you. But there's a lot of people who do know that they're dyslexic and they're just frustrated. They hate that. And they start, acting out and doing really bad things, getting into really bad crowds. And all of a sudden now they're passed around in the foster homes, or they're passed around and through, juvies and just through the jail system. And, without the right information, people just look at them as criminals and just, people who just are angry and they don't even know why they're angry, yet why you're angry. And from the outside, it just looks like you're just a, bad person, but it's like you don't know what someone's going through. And if people just treat you as crazy or whatever it is they look at you as from the outside, then, you know, there's a lot of lost kids right now because of stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with you.
Yeah. And, you know, there's a lot of kids that are, you know, right now being molested, and they're going to grow up to probably be molesters. Hopefully not. But like, people are going to look at them like, oh God, they're monsters. And I'm not saying they don't become monsters, but how do you think they got that way? You know, there's kids growing up that go shoot up a school here, like in the United States. That's a big thing. You know, you shoot up a school, and it's like, yeah, because he just was angry, and, you know, maybe his father beat him, and just there's a lot. It doesn't usually you don't usually just wake up, you know, angry. You don't usually just wake up a shooter. You don't wake up a molester. Usually, it's a long, just dark world, a dark, you know, this hall of you just going through horrible shit, and then yeah. And so, you know, like with you, like I said, you could have been maybe not who knows what you could have been if they didn't find a diagnosis, and, you know, because you were frustrated with yourself, not knowing what the problem was. And maybe if you would have, maybe another couple more years down the road, maybe something really bad could have happened.
Yeah, I think, you know, if you know, if I hadn't found out what it was, and, you know, and that judge, and, you know, I hadn't found wrestling, I think I would have probably, you know, been in prison right now. I definitely would have, because I was just a troublemaker. But, you know, thank God I'm not anymore, and, you know, that's, you know, the past. But, you know, you learn from the past.
Right. Okay. So how'd you find wrestling, and what was it about it that, like, just kind of what made you gravitate towards it?
Well, I don't know if in the United States you know this, but in England, wrestling's a big thing. And every Saturday afternoon years ago on ITV, they had a program called The World of Sport, and you had wrestlers like Big Daddy and Rollerball Rocco and all these old wrestlers. And I used to watch these wrestlers with my grandfather. And then obviously when I became about 11, 91, we started getting WWE over here.
Right.
So WWF. I know right, WWF, and I know you Americans are much more advanced. So we were getting the Ultimate Warrior and probably Hulk Hogan in 91. And I saw Hulk Hogan, and that was it. I was just hooked on it. And my mum used to take me to the local venue to watch wrestling. So I started watching it and started going to the local shows, and, you know, became an absolute fanatic about wrestling. And luckily, again, the social worker I had, the youth worker, she said if I behaved myself at school for so many weeks, and I can't get in no trouble, my school grades have got to be perfect, I've got to do everything perfect, she will introduce me into 2 professional wrestlers. And that's how I got into it. And, you know, and then I started training to be a professional wrestler in England. And then I started actually, like, so about 16 and a half, when I just left school, I started becoming a professional wrestler, making a living for it, and, you know, traveling around the United Kingdom to holiday parks through the summer, and then wrestling in all the big cities and towns all across the United Kingdom. So, you know, I've had a great career and thoroughly enjoyed it. And that's really how I got into it.
Yeah, one of the things about wrestlers, and I don't watch wrestling much anymore, but I respect the hell out of wrestling. Like when I listen to certain podcasts and just listen to stories, I listened to on Joe Rogan, he had The Undertaker on, and, you know, I'm just listening to I love their stories, because especially like the old days in the 90s, when they're in the 80s, when they're traveling, and because people think like, okay, because it's fake and all that there's certain things, it's just, it's not that rough. But people don't realize that they don't just wrestle on the days that is aired. They wrestle what they call dark matches, and they wrestle a lot of times. It's like over 300 times a year. And they wrestle all the time, and they travel. And back in the day, they would just travel in cars, and they would have so many injuries that they didn't know about. And this is why steroids became a huge thing, because they would just have these doctors that would just come in and say, what do you need? It could be cocaine, it could be steroids, it could be morphine, it could be anything. And whatever it is that's ailing you, your back, you know, is kind of out of line. Oh, we don't need to fix that. We'll just give you a little shot here, and boom, you're good to go. And a lot of these wrestlers are especially the older ones, they're so broken down because of those old days. It's a little better now because of all the technology that has changed medical history, and obviously the WWE especially has cleared out all the steroid stuff. but wrestlers, they take a beating. Just because it's not real doesn't mean getting slammed on a floor or the ring or anywhere isn't real, and doesn't mean it doesn't hurt.
Yeah, totally, man. I mean, when I first started and I went professional, I mean, it was you used to work from Sunday to Friday, and that was 2 shows a day. So you'd do one afternoon show and an evening show, and then plus on a Saturday you would work as well. So you didn't really have no time off. You were away, and let's face facts, when you're like 16 and a half, you're not a man. And I was thrown into this man's world. All of a sudden, I was with real men. And now it was a total different world. So I'd become like I was a boy going into a real man's world.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's, you look at someone like, I don't know, let's say like a Rey Mysterio, and obviously people who don't know wrestling just look them up. Rey Mysterio's like 5'4", and he's just, but he's built, like he's huge in his, stature, like muscle-wise, but he's so tiny, and he's wrestling guys like the Big Show, who's 7'2", and he gets through the match. He does all kind of crazy flips and so on, but he takes a beating. Obviously, you have to make it look a certain way, because obviously the Big Show in real life would kill him. But still, like for those guys to even be in the same ring wrestling with each other, even like back when they talk about with like Andre the Giant, obviously one of the biggest, most historical moments is when Hulk Hogan slammed him. And, they've said so many times, like, if Andre didn't want you to pick him up, you weren't picking him up. No matter how strong Hulk Hogan wasn't picking up Andre the Giant unless Andre said, okay, I'm allowing you to. Because there's these, there's these crazy photos of Andre the Giant with, like, a beer can, and it just disappears in his hand because he's got such giant hands. And so these people are men. They're strong, and they go through punishment, but they're all injured. They're all, like, that's why do you think like The Rock and John Cena are now, obviously The Rock especially, but John Cena is now going in the direction of movies because, how many torn ACLs and busted bodies and messed up backs and necks do you want to go through when you can do something more and make more money? So yeah, these guys are like, they're warriors. I don't know how anyone can make fun of wrestling whatsoever. Like I said, just because I don't watch it doesn't mean I don't think it's still not tough.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, my friend. Totally agree with you.
Who do you think is like the most famous wrestler from like your area, from like England?
Oh God, I mean, I don't know. Well, I would say the British Bulldog, Davey Boy Smith. I mean, ultimately.
Yeah, William Regal.
Yeah, Dynamite Kid, maybe. I would say Davey Boy Smith is probably. But it's funny, in England, if you walked around and you spoke to the average person who was over 40, maybe 40, I'm 42, so if you go over 42, no one would be bigger than Big Daddy. You only have to Google him right now, where you are right now, and just put Big Daddy Shirley Crabtree. He was the national hero in the United Kingdom, and he was huge. And, even talking about that, then years ago, there's a video on YouTube with Big Daddy, and he's pushing a kid in a wheelchair, and the commentator openly says, and there's the spastic boy. So, it was said openly on YouTube. And this was in the 80s, early 80s, with a national hero like Big Daddy pushing out, a kid in a wheelchair. And Big Daddy was so big, the Queen Elizabeth in England and Margaret Thatcher used to watch wrestling on Saturday afternoon to watch Big Daddy wrestle. That's how big he was.
Yeah. I think there's something to wrestling too, because even though it is scripted, I think some of the scripted part does help. It makes it so some of these, like I said, back to Rey Mysterio, who's like 5, whatever. I don't want to get his actual height, but let's say he's 5'4", and Big Show is 7'2". They make it so, the Goliath, just trying to slay the beast type of thing, where it's like this little guy has a chance in this scripted world. And they make it work. And so like there's been people with disabilities in wrestling. And obviously, like I said, Andre the Giant really did have a disability. Just because he was this big, huge guy and he can walk, but like he was deteriorating as his career went on. It actually was very sad after he did pass, because he was just gone. But there is this like, hero, Marvel DC thing of this guy who just overcomes so much and has to beat this obviously crazy superstar that's way bigger than him, or just, has the title, and it's like there's no way that person can beat that person. Like the Hulk Hogan thing.
Yeah, I totally agree with you.
Yeah, like Hulk Hogan, he slayed the Giant. And
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with you.
Inspired a lot of children to say like, I can beat this, I can do that. And so yeah, even though it is scripted, it's like it gives a lot of people hope, but maybe that's what a lot of people with disabilities lean to.
Yeah, I totally agree with you there. And I'm actually, a bit of a bodybuilding buff as well. I like to work out and stuff like that. And you work out that the guy that played the Incredible Hulk, Lou Ferrigno's deaf.
Right.
So there you are. I mean, the ultimate bad guy, the Incredible Hulk, was actually a deaf guy that actually played the part. So yeah, it is a very. I think everyone's got a soft spot for wrestling. I think everyone loves it, and I'm just love being a part of the industry, and so people can enjoy going to it. And we get thousands and thousands of disabled people coming to watch wrestling. And I think they do come to watch that wrestling because, I think, when I don't know what it feels like to be sat in a wheelchair, but, young people in wheelchairs, I think it's a great thing. They can come and sit like everyone else and cheer for the bad guy and cheer for the good guy and boo for the bad guy and know that they're not going to be abused because that's their job to be booed and, to be cheered. So I think it's a great atmosphere. I think it's a big thing for everyone to enjoy.
Yeah, and it's a business, obviously, especially in the higher ups like WWE, NXT, and all that, where they, women, like there was even a consideration that they were just going to allow like SmackDown, which for most people is, I don't know, it's Thursday or Friday now. They were going to have just one of the major shows just be all women because now women are doing so well in the higher ups now because before it was always a couple women that just would be successful and so on, but now they have such a division and a cruiserweights and all that, and like I said, now like every ethnicity is pretty much represented because it's huge in Japan, it's huge in England. They've done a lot of these shows where they go overseas and everything to like Iraq and Afghanistan, and so everyone is now really being represented now. So it's a really, and again, I'm sure people could make an argument that there should be more black or whatever in there, but pretty much everyone's represented. So it's a very kind of affluent just community of, like I said, everyone can kind of gravitate towards their hero and say, wow, like that's my guy. I wish I could be that guy, and maybe I can be, and maybe not in wrestling, but somewhere in life.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, totally agree with you again.
Yeah, it's a very underappreciated like format in entertainment or genre of entertainment.
Yeah, it's sort of like part of the fair and the fun fair. It's like that traveling world we all used to years ago. The circus would come to town, and everyone in the town would go and see. That's wrestling. I think it's the last form of entertainment of that traveling world, that mystique traveling world. Masked men and stuff like that. And, giants, weird looking people. I think wrestling's still got that little thing which any other sport or entertainment can't produce, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, because if you look at it, like there's, especially like some of these big guys, like I mentioned Andre or The Big Show, or like those big guys always have a place. Like obviously they stand out and they're freakish to some people, unless they play basketball. But obviously in these like major countries where basketball isn't what it is in America, these people are scouted because they know they can do something with them. There is something to, like I said, the David and Goliath thing where it's like you just put some big guy. He may not be the most gifted or talented or physically, just he can't jump off top ropes and do all that, but he's physically opposing where people go like, ooh, that's scary. Like you can do something with that. He doesn't even have, like there's been wrestlers who don't have that. There's this guy named the Great Khali. He's this big Indian guy. He's like 7'4" or 3. And he was never considered the greatest wrestler, but he had such a scary face and he was huge. His moves weren't the greatest. He had like these chops and he would put his leg out. You would just kind of run into it. So he was very stiff, but he was so big. And obviously, especially from in India, they loved him, but he was just this big guy that is like, in most cases, you can't put him on any sport because he couldn't really move that much. He had a lot of body aches and pains and stuff, but you can do something with him. And that's kind of the thing with wrestling. You can kind of piece something together and make him something, no matter who you are or what you look like.
Yeah, totally agree with you, my friend. Totally agree with you.
Yeah. So like I said, I know a little bit about wrestling. Because a lot of it, like I said, like because I think now we, especially here in the States, like it seems like the older you get, it's like you can't really admit that you like wrestling, but it's like I don't really watch wrestling much anymore, but I respect the hell out of the business because of what I used to watch and listening to some of the podcasts like Stone Cold or Jericho or some of these guys' podcasts who just tell their stories. And it's like, I remember a match where Triple H, and again, like I said, for people who don't know these guys, Triple H is now he's kind of running the business now. Vince McMahon is kind of on his way out because he's older, but he still has the final say. But Triple H is dating his daughter, or married to Stephanie McMahon, and he's kind of running the show now. And he had a match, and I don't remember who it was with, but he tore I believe it was either his MCL or his ACL during the match, and he had to wrestle for another 20 minutes, and he did. I don't know how he did it, but he did it. And you can say, well, football players, they got to go through this. They got to worry about a guy hitting them and, boxing and this and that. If a boxer tears his MCL in the ring, he's done. He's not wrestling. He's not fighting. If a football player gets a concussion now, they take him out. He's done for the game. He may be done for a week, but he tore his MCL or ACL and he wrestled for 20 more minutes. I mean, you can say it's scripted all you want, but that was a real injury. And these guys just, it's all about entertaining, and it's all about just making it look good. And, I remember Stone Cold, he got paralyzed in a match with Owen Hart, who also, he ended up dying, obviously.
Yeah.
But it's not like what people, just because it's scripted, just because it's scripted doesn't mean these people are not taking high risks. It's a crazy business. So you've been in matches yourself?
Yeah. I was a full-time professional wrestler for a long time, so yeah, I know the total risk, and yeah, what you're saying is 100% correct. Yeah.
What was kind of like, people who might not know a lot about wrestling, but what was like your style? Were you like a high flyer, like a physical, imposing guy? What was your...
I kind of just follow the old traditional British wrestling style, which again, it's a style of its own, the European style. And we do a lot of acrobatic style over here, and it's a total different style to the United States way, the American style of wrestling. So it's different style, but yeah, I was always a clean wrestler. Let's put it that way.
Right, and then of course, there's the whole what is it called, baby face and heel. Can you tell people what that is?
Well, a babyface is a good guy and a heel's a bad guy. So you're either one or the other. And I was always just a normal clean cut wrestler.
Yeah, exactly. Now, one of the things about wrestling that people don't know is like there's just like, even though it is scripted and you may have things worked out, but there's a lot of kind of like you kind of have to, you're kind of telling a story through the moves and through, whatever, your taunting, your expressions and so on. And so, especially with like, let's say the baby face is getting beat up for a while, he's supposed to take a beating for a while because that's him, it's like, especially when it's someone smaller than the other person. It's like, oh, he's getting beat up. This is over with. This looks like ridiculous. And then all of a sudden, that was kind of like the Hulk Hogan thing where he would do this like Hulkamania thing where he would just start pumping up and he would just start fighting after he was getting his ass kicked for half the match. All of a sudden, like the crowd cheering him, he would wake up and he would just overcome and just fight back, and it would, a lot of times win the match. But there's a huge story that you tell, and you have to kind of, like how do you? Can you tell people how you kind of communicate with your opponent, like during matches, without obviously just yelling like, "Hey, pick me up"?
I can't give all my secrets away.
Right, but
I think I'll have to keep that one to myself.
Okay, but I'm saying that is a real thing, right?
I'm not going to deny anything.
Okay, but I mean, like so for like I said, they really, there's ways of communicating, even if it's not verbally. There's physical ways, and obviously there's people that and again, there's a lot of wrestlers have talked about it, and you can see it on camera and stuff. But there's a lot of times where someone will get slammed, and they may communicate while they're on the ground. But there is ways of really messing that up, because there's a story the Undertaker was telling where he got, what was it? He got his nose broken a few times, and one time the one wrestler was supposed to clothesline him, but with an open hand. But he kind of, I think this wrestler was either drinking or something. He was just not all there at the time, and when he was supposed to clothesline him, he kept his fist closed and just broke his nose, shattered it. Or no, I'm sorry, it was eye socket. He broke both of his eye sockets in 2 different matches, and one of them was because of a guy who didn't open his fist. And so that's how, like, again, telling the story and being kind of one with the wrestler, your opponent, you kind of have to know each other enough to make a match, work, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Have you ever been in a ring with somebody who just completely was whatever? They were intoxicated, they weren't all there, whatever, that kind of messed up the move you were trying to do?
Yeah, definitely. I've been in there, but most of the guys I've wrestled are total professionals. I mean,
yeah,
most of the guys I've wrestled, hand on heart, I've never known anyone to really want to go out there and maliciously, seriously hurt someone. So that's the people I've worked with over the years are total pros. You know what I mean? So I've never really encountered any of that. No, I can't say. Most of the guys I've wrestled, 100% professionals, and no one maliciously goes out to hurt anyone. No.
Right. Yeah. Chemistry is really, really important, and obviously you have to take it serious because, again, you can get severely hurt.
Yeah.
Have you taken any real severe injuries?
Yeah. I ruptured a kidney once. I mean, I had a kidney infection, and that was through a certain wrestler whacking me a bit too hard in that area. But, touch wood, no, I haven't really had like a bust leg or anything like that, or broken arms or anything like that. A couple of broken fingers and, a couple of times I've gone home bleeding and stuff like that, but nothing really, drastically wrong with me.
Yeah, well, that's pretty good. Do you still wrestle?
Yeah. No, not anymore. I promote now, so I've started a company called World Pro Wrestling, which I'm getting a lot of help off the Hardy, who runs Kaleidoscope, the Kaleidoscope team, which, want to plug them. They help disabled entrepreneurs. And, when I first met Hardy, I mean, it was through the pandemic and all that, so we couldn't meet in person, face to face. But, once I started talking to him about it, then he started realizing that this wasn't some sort of pipe dream that some disabled person had walked in and wanted to be a wrestling promoter. This was an actual fact. And, before that, I'd been a promoter. I started promoting probably around about 2006. I actually originally got some help off the Prince's Trust. And I don't know if you know what the Prince's Trust is. It's a charity run in the United Kingdom for disadvantaged people, basically. It's a charity that Prince Charles set up. It helps entrepreneurs, and they give you a business mentor, and they help you with money and set it all up. So I did actually do pretty well the first run from 2006 to 2014. And if you think about it, I mean, the last show I ran in 2014 before I had a big break and stuff like that. The last show, I mean, the main event, I mean, people who are listening to this podcast tonight, the wrestler actually main evented that show was AJ Styles. So, I mean, he's massive in WWE now. So, the standard I got it to was, I had Jushin Thunder Liger there, I had Tanahashi, I had Davey Boy Smith Jr. So I got it to real good standard. And then, because I had dyslexia and stuff like that, I'm not giving myself any, I'm not sort of saying it's because of that, but it was mismanaged and stuff like that. I couldn't really, still even then, I didn't really know how to handle money, if you know what I mean.
Right.
And that was the problem with the downfall and why it went wrong. But, you learn by your mistakes, and here I am to fight the tail, and here I am again, going again at it.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Now, is it for like, you're promoting, is it for like locally, or do you delve into other countries, or is it just promoting for like where you live?
Well, this show is going to be at Cheltenham Town Hall, which is my local venue. And the company is called World Pro Wrestling. So any entrepreneurs out there, disabled entrepreneurs who want to support me, you can tap it up on Facebook, World Pro Wrestling. That's where I'm at. And basically, we've got a plan, and I could see it going global. I mean, we've got partners from Japan in All Japan Pro Wrestling. We've got partners in the United States and Mexico, Canada, Europe. So yeah, we're a worldwide company, but we're just started off now. So it's going to take a little bit of time, but I've got a good plan for the next 3 years. So yeah,
that's good though. That's awesome. So a couple more.
I'm hoping. I mean, one of the plans is definitely to have. I want to represent not just my black people, but I want to represent disabled people, and especially if we got a TV deal, because then people from all over the world would be able to see, this is a disabled entrepreneur. He's achieved this, and even if someone else is sat in their wheelchair, or if they're partially blind, or if they're deaf, they can then look at themselves and say, well, if this guy can do it, I can do it. And that's the message I really want to send out. And even on this podcast, I just want to say to everyone who's listening to this, and, TJ, I really thank you for giving me the platform today. But, I just want to echo my message on your platform to anyone who's listening to this message. If you've got a dream, and as Martin Luther King says, he had a dream, let's go and make that dream happen. I'm a big hip-hop fan. And Jay-Z, at the end of the concert, I went, Brooklyn. It's on iTunes, actually. Jay-Z says, at the end of it, he says, Brooklyn, don't be good, be great. Well, I just want to change that quote and say, disabled people, don't be good, let's be great. Let's be great, disabled people. Let's go get what we want.
Yeah, I mean, you could really... That's the thing. So many people... people ask, like, how can I advocate? How can I do more? Someone was asking me that the other day, and I'm like, look, you don't have to do a podcast. You don't have to do a YouTube channel. You don't have to do anything in that kind of medium. Like what you're doing, you could really put people with disabilities in a position where it's like, hey, you can go out there and body slam somebody, and maybe no one would have let you do that before, but now you can go out there and do something crazy, and now you're representing some people that never thought they would ever be represented on a, in a ring.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at it and really go deep down into it, I mean, Vince McMahon has got dyslexia, so he's disabled as well. He's one of the best entrepreneurs in the world. So if he can do it, everyone else can do it.
Yeah, but I don't think a lot of people know that about Vince McMahon. I don't think, I'm sure he's talked about it, but that's not something people really know. Whereas I think you'll focus on that. You'll show people in the light that it doesn't matter if you're deaf or whatever. Like, they'll be represented because you know what it's like to be on that. Whereas Vince, I mean, I'm not saying he's embarrassed about it, but I don't think a lot of people know that about Vince McMahon, because, I think with Vince McMahon, he comes from that era of, you keep things like that to yourself. Right.
And you struggle through. But, I'll go back to it. I was inspired really as a younger kid by the Rocky movies. And the reason I was inspired by the Rocky movies is if you look at Rocky himself, who Sylvester Stallone portrays, I mean, he's got every characteristic of a dyslexic person, a disabled person. And I mean, the ultimate underdog eventually wins the heavyweight championship. So, I mean, I know it's Hollywood and it's a far-fetched story, but, if you look at that story of the ultimate underdog and he gets this one opportunity. Yeah. And sometimes as a disabled entrepreneur, you have got to, when you get that one opportunity, just grasp it. Just grasp it by every hand or every bit ounce of strength you've got in you, and just grasp it as hard as you can and go with it, and then you'll get it. But you've just got to wait for that one little break. And once you get that break, everything will work for you.
Right. Well, back to like the beginning of the podcast when you said you were just in your room and you're daydreaming. And we daydream, especially guys. Guys daydream, I think, more than women. But we daydream about all kind of heroic stuff. Just, maybe somebody's being robbed. Some guy's robbing some pretty girl, and you go over and you stop it because, the pretty girl will love you or whatever. But like something like Rocky, even though it's far-fetched and they made it so Hollywood, because it's also based around a true story and a real fighter, but they made it so much more just to, obviously sell the box office and all. It's a great series, a great movie, and six movies now. But it made a lot of kids just say like, oh, I could do that. I want to fight. And like I said, we daydream a lot. We just sit around and we think, even if it's stuff that we could never do. And I'm sure in your, maybe at the point in time when you started reading magazines, maybe you never thought at least in the beginning, oh, I'm going to wrestle. I'm going to go in and I'm going to do that. But you made it happen. And so movies like Rocky and just even if it's somebody who doesn't want to box, they translate that to something they're going to do down the road in life. It's like, I want to fight for something. I want to, I want to overcome whatever it is. It doesn't have to be another fighter or another person. It could just be just whatever, their own sanity, just something in life that they want to overcome and become big at it. And, so even though it's kind of cutesy and we know it's not real, but you can translate anything into something else.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you ever
totally agree with you?
Just kind of quickly here, getting towards the end, like, do you feel like you're doing all this promotion? Do you ever feel like you would wrestle on any of your events?
I've been. My mum says I'm too old now. I say I'm not. My mum says I'm too old and too out of shape. I say I'm not. I say I'm just right age now. It's funny you should say that. If it was something special, yes, I would. And there is a match I would love to do. If it ever happens, I'll never know. If it ever happens, I don't know. But like I say, I never say never in this world. But yeah, I mean, it would have to be something special. But there's a guy called Andrew Anderson, who's a good friend of mine. He's based in New Jersey, and he keeps prodding me to do this one match, and I am considering it. So, but if I did this one match, I mean, I'm going to say a name called The Great Muta, and I'm sure you know who he is. Was in at WCW years ago.
What's his name? I'm sorry.
The Great Muta. He's a Japanese
Great Muta.
wrestler.
Yeah. Great Muta. Yeah. I know he is.
And I would love to tag with him and go against a couple of Americans. But again, if it ever happens, like I say never. But it would have to be a big match if I did. But yeah, I think I could do probably one or two more matches. But I haven't done it for so long. Wrestled physically, I mean, it takes a lot to get into that type of shape again, and to get the moves, to get your timing right. So it would be that. But yeah, I probably would. Yeah, I definitely would. I would never say never. Right. Put it that way.
Well, the reason why I asked you is because you talked about wanting to have more people represented with disabilities and stuff, and obviously for you, that you are older and you don't wrestle anymore, and you're behind the scenes. A lot of people aren't going to know that you're dyslexic, and you're not really represented. Maybe it comes out, and maybe but you're probably not going to put yourself on the posters and all that. So the way you can represent is obviously going out there and wrestling and showing, hey, it doesn't matter what your disability is or whatever you go through, you can get out there and wrestle. And I wondered if you
were definitely. I mean, I would. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's a possibility I might do one more. If I do, I will message you and say, TJ, you've encouraged this, and if anything does happen to me, you're the one to blame.
Okay, fair enough.
I'll say this guy I did a podcast with, he was encouraging me, has now really encouraged me, and I'm ready to go, man. So if anything does happen, TJ's the one to blame.
So basically, if you get hurt, I'm the heel.
Yeah, you're going to be the one. Getting the call on Christmas.
I'm going to get
Christmas
booed.
Day to say my son's not my son anymore.
So I'm just okay. Yeah, I'll do a promo, and I'll just shit on the people that are attacking me.
Absolutely.
I'll put on a mask.
Absolutely.
But just like, okay, to just kind of wrap it up, finish up, like, what was it? I mean, obviously you got married and you have a family and so on. Like, when you found your wife, because obviously love is something that people strive for, and people don't really know how hard it is for some people with disabilities. What was it like for you to kind of obviously eventually meet your wife, and did you lack any confidence or anything as far as obviously not being able to read properly or talk a certain way or whatever? Because obviously confidence is a huge thing for men. What was it like to kind of meet your true love and try to make her love you, even though you have to maybe even overcompensate in a way because of your condition?
Yeah, I mean, like talking about that, like, I mean, we're not married yet; we're still engaged. So,
okay, well, you better get on that.
no problem. I met her in a pub in Cheltenham, well, like a bar, and we met and stuff like that. But some of the stuff we've been through over the last, we've been together 5 years actually, November the 5th, and so some of the things we've been through. I mean, her son is a type 1 diabetic, and as human beings, we don't look at diabetes as a disability, but it is a disability. And imagine having to inject yourself a couple of times a day just when you want to eat. So there's definitely that. And then the one son wears glasses and stuff like that. So there was no problem when it comes to my dyslexia. I mean, some of her kids are dyslexic as well, so there was no problem with that. So it's just, it was no problem. And I've never really been one of those people to lack confidence around women. I've always been pretty confident around women, but I can see some people could, but I've never really been that one. I did used to go out with a girl years ago, and she used to say I was thick and stupid, and really take the mick out of me, and that's why I started becoming a promoter, because I thought to myself, well, hang on, if you're saying I'm thick and stupid and you say you love me, I'm going to show you. And I did show her. I'm going to show you. And that's how I got through that. But my girlfriend now, definitely not. Never, or any of her children, they don't look at me any different, and, all good.
No, that's good. I mean, that's got to be great to have someone who balances you out and kind of fills in the gaps that you can't, even if it's whatever, money or things you can't read or whatever. Like the fact that she's okay with any of that. And because I think when people say, when they have a relationship, it's 50-50. And if you give 100%, again, that's 50%. So if someone can, obviously you can fill in certain blanks for her that she can't provide or just lacks or whatever, but she fills in the stuff that really helps you with your condition. And it's obviously a very beautiful thing. But if I could give you any advice, I'm not going to give you any advice about getting in the ring. It's up to you. But I would say you might want to get on that whole marrying her, because girls get impatient after a while, and if you're engaged for too long, they almost feel like you're not serious. And if you really love her, you might not want to wait too much longer.
Okay, so I'm gonna say to my girlfriend, you're encouraging me to get married, and I tell my mum you're encouraging me to wrestle. You're a bad influence on me, TJ.
Okay. Hey, I'm not telling you to cheat. I'm not telling you to spend all your money. I'm just saying, you got love. You might want to hold on to it, because love is very hard to find. I'm telling you this from a single person, a person who is single, I should say.
If I come ever to wrestle in the United States, I'm gonna get a T-shirt which says "TJ, you're a bad influence." Whatever arena I'm at,
I would love that.
You could see the T-shirt and say, "I made that man famous."
That's fine. You could, even if you want to put my picture on the back, that's fine. I don't care. I would love. I would still support you.
Absolutely.
But yeah, buddy, I thank you for coming on. You're a great dude, and I'm hope we can be friends and still talk outside of here. And anything you need or you just want to talk sometime, I'm always here. But I'm very happy.
Thank you. I mean, if you ever need anything off me, we've got the show on February 19th. It's maybe being streamed live, so if it does, I'll give you a link so you can obviously watch it. I'll be commentating on it. If there's any listeners out there who are on social media, sorry if I plug my Facebook.
No, please promote whatever you want.
Just get on there and support me and show me a bit of love on World Pro Wrestling page. And, I hope this inspired a few people, and thank you for having me on, my friend.
Yeah, buddy. All right. We'll talk in a little bit. And again, like I said, thank you for coming on and sharing your story and being so honest.
Thank you very much, my friend. God bless you.
You too, brother.
Bye now.
Bye. All right, guys. Let's see. Hold on. Let me end the call. Okay, he ended it. Or no, now I ended it. I love people like that. He's just so cheerful and happy, and like if you talk to him, you wouldn't even know he has a disability, because he's just a good dude, and he just doesn't let it stop him. And I know he says it's not the worst disability, which he's right, but it's still a disability and still impacts him, and he just pushes, and he it's got to inspires me, but it's got to inspire a lot of people who There's people that are just, it's got to be frustrating. And they're like, I can't, remember this. I can't put this word together or whatever it is that's really just holding them back. It's got to suck. It's got to frustrate you. Whatever it is that's making your life slow down and making it harder, it can be super, super frustrating. And but good for him who just turned it into something. He found something that he enjoyed as a 16-year-old kid who just who liked wrestling. And now he not only did he wrestle, but he now is promoting it. He has his own events. And, he says a wrestler came to one of his shows, AJ Styles. He is a very big wrestler. As I said, I don't watch wrestling, but I know enough of it. As you can tell, I kind of went a little too far with wrestling in this one because I really showed that I know wrestling because I used to watch it religiously. And, I know enough about it because I really do respect that art form and that, whatever you want to call it, sport or whatever. It is, you cannot not respect these guys because they are tough as it gets. And it's not the same as it used to be, but these guys are still ballsy and women too. A lot of these women now are really athletic. And people who don't know, Ronda Rousey, who's a real UFC fighter, she got into it because she loves it. And real athletes, Brock Lesnar, who obviously was in UFC, but he was a wrestler first. And these people they want to get into it because it's you make a lot of people happy and angry at the same time, but people get really married to these characters. And I think with Matt, what Matt is doing, really putting representation of the disability community on his shows, really will inspire a lot of these people because, man, someone with a disability, again, daydreaming. I don't think you don't imagine a blind guy or someone with no legs or somebody out there wrestling, but it's possible. I've seen people out there who are dwarfs wrestling, even just a woman wrestling, a black guy wrestling for a while was kind of taboo. But, again, I mentioned I think it was last episode, there was a wrestler named Zach Gowen who had one leg and he wrestled. Like I said, it's possible. It's just to the higher ups make it happen. And since Matt knows what it's like to be one of us, and he is now one of the higher ups, he can make it happen. And that's advocating in a different way. You don't always have to do something like what I'm doing. Everybody finds their own niche and finds a way of doing it. And so it doesn't have to be his voice. He can just do it through his promotion. And that's beautiful. So I'll see you guys on the next episode. We will get out of here. Everybody take care of yourself. Thank you for the support. Bullets here chilling with me. And goodbye, y'all.